Hello, my name is Joe Harrison. This is the second video on Sam, a 9-year-old third grader who is currently attending school at Summit Academy, the educational arm of Piney Ridge Treatment Facility. I'm going to talk now about my informal assessment. Before I assessed him, I thoroughly reviewed all of his evaluations, and Sam showed some strengths in reading and math. I decided to assess him in math after looking at some of his strengths and weaknesses. Sam is below grade level in math, and that may be because the past couple years he's had such a nomadic life. He's been in and out of treatment facilities and has lacked a stable continuum of educational support. And I say this because in his educational file, there was some earlier testing that was done when he was in a lower grade that showed that he was below average in grade level in every subject except for math. Sam has also expressed in much of his evaluation that he enjoys math. Sam has strengths in math. Some of his strengths are he can count past 50. He can add and subtract without regrouping, and he can identify and counting money. Some of the weakness shown that you can define from his evaluations earlier on some of the tests. Sam cannot tell time with a standard clock. And he also has trouble completing some subtraction problems. And currently, they are working with Sam and in his classes on telling time with a normal analog clock, one that shows hours and minutes hands. So before I did this, I observed Sam the day before I gave him the informal assessment. Sam was observed in class, and as he was in class, as I observed Sam in his classroom setting, the day before I did his formal, they were working on math. He was working on some subtraction problems, and he was using some of his modifications and differentiated instruction. He was using subtraction with some manipulatives, and he was doing pretty well. Also, when I observed him in class, he paid attention to the instruction almost the whole time I was in there, but a couple times he got distracted and he was tapping on the desk and doing some other unwanted behaviors that irritated his peers. Also during that time, he was asked how his day was going, and he replied, "I want to go home." And they also read aloud a little while in the second part of this class, and Sam was reluctant to do so, but he did, and he did a pretty good job. So after observing him and reviewing his evaluations that showed how far behind he was compared to his peers in math and science, I decided to assess him on telling time. So I created a small assessment that would give him 10 trials to pick to decide what time the clock is. The clock I used is a normal clock, about 10 inches in diameter, with every 5 minutes it was labeled like a standard clock. And I decided to do this 2 different ways. The first way I did it was I would display a time, and Sam would tell me what time it was, and I would record that on the sheet. I would do that for 5 trials. Since he has problems with distraction and he likes doing hands-on things, which has been expressed over and over in his evaluation and is what his teachers had told me as well, the next 5 trials I would tell him a time and he would display it on the clock, and I would write what he did. Overall, he scored a 70% on the assessment I did. At times he wanted to play or talk because it's a big deal for these kids, I think, to see someone new because they're in such a restricted environment. And it's especially a big deal for these students in these facilities to see someone that they believe cares about them, because a lot of them have never had anyone that cared about them in their life, and now here I am taking an interest in him. So he wanted to talk. He hesitated when I gave it to him to begin with, and the first time he was supposed to display, or I put on there, was 3 o'clock. And he guessed 3:01, which I decided that was okay because it was close enough. And we've all seen those clocks, how the hand can move a little off the actual minute. He missed one out of these, and that was 9:23. All the other trials in the first part of this ended on a marked minute hand, like a 5 or a 0. And he got all of those correct except for that one. So he did pretty well on that. The second part, I wanted him to display a time I called out. And of course, as soon as I handed him the clock, he started playing with it. So I had to get him on task, which took a minute or two. I just let him play with it for a second to get that out of his mind. Okay. As I called out the times, on these he got 2 wrong out of the 5. And again, he got wrong the one that was not on a marked area, like 5:23. He also missed 6:30. He put 5:30 instead. And I believe he just was not paying attention at that point because he wanted to talk instead of continue the assessment. Once this was completed, I talked to him for a minute and thanked him for his time and left. The assessment, I believe, shows that he is making progress on telling time, but he still needs some work, along with all the rest of his educational assessment. Informal assessments are good things to see if we are on track in a classroom and if a student is making progress. And that is the summary of my informal assessment. Thank you.